Welcome to the News 13 Coronavirus Virtual Town Hall. I'm George Roberts.
And I'm Marie Johns. Our topic today is education during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's been almost 2 months since the governor closed school buildings across the Commonwealth. And since then, there have been many challenges to keep our kids learning.
Now, joining us today are superintendents from 2 area school districts. We have Dr. Cosmas Curry from Stroudsburg Area School District and Mr. John Rushefski from the Jim Thorpe Area School District. Gentlemen, thank you both for being with us. Let's start. March 13th, the governor ordered schools closed across the state. It's been almost 2 months now since the kids have been in school. Some schools were ready, some weren't. How do you think you started right out of the box? Dr. Curry, let's start with you. How did things start with the district when the governor gave the order?
A little rocky. I think that we were in the process of really looking at our technology, implementing technology, and probably at a 2-to-1 ratio to one device for every 2 students. And we had ideas for the fall about going 1-to-1, of which we are still going to implement. But unfortunately, when this happened, we put together a continuity of education plan in less than 2 weeks, and it was during the first 10 days of closure, it was really deemed a short-term process at that point. We weren't sure what was going to happen, so we kind of looked at them as snow days in which we would make them all up. So in essence, what we ended up doing was having 3 days of training for our staff to provide online education. We did that, I want to say it was March 25th, 6th, and 7th. We started that the last Monday of March, and we've been going ever since and really like our plan, real happy with it. I'm sure we'll get into more detail of that later, but that's the way we started and learned a lot of great lessons from it, and feel that we were able to really have a great success rate. Between 70 and 85% of our students are actively involved on a daily basis, and I credit our administration and staff for their work and motivating and inspiring students to want to be online and do what's necessary to enhance their education in a way that we've never done before.
Switching over to Jim Thorpe, Mr. Rushefski, same question. I know when we had spoken earlier, you had said Jim Thorpe was already a 1-to-1 school district, so maybe things were a little different. How did things unfold for you when this all began?
The best way I could describe it, it was almost like building a plane while in flight. There were things that we had to do on the spot, and it wasn't just to do it just to see if we can be successful. It was more about we needed to do it. And we had this project underway called the Olympian Learning Environment. We are Jim Thorpe, the home of the Olympians. And the Olympian Learning Environment is essentially a 1-to-1 learning initiative with our students. We have Apple products, laptops, iPads for students in grades K through 12. So essentially, we leveraged our existing technology infrastructure and went from it being a supplemental resource to a primary resource beginning, essentially the days after March 13th.
Okay, Dr. Curry, let's go over to you. Your district is using the Google Classroom platform for students in grades 1 through 12. The kindergarten students are either mailed educational packets or their parents retrieve them online. Is that how it's working right now?
Yes, it's exactly how it's working.
Okay, and the district has distributed 900 Chromebooks and over 100 Wi-Fi hotspot devices to families that don't have internet access. Are all those families now, as far as you know, you said about 70 to 80% of the students are participating on a daily basis. That means we've got about 20 or 30% that you haven't heard from?
The 20 to 30% that we haven't heard from, it's a combination of things. It could be that they are randomly participating, or they could have moved, or we have reached out to families individually through the individual schools administration and or guidance staff, and certainly teachers are reaching out to students. Some we just haven't heard from, unfortunately, but we still continue to try. But that's a much smaller percent when the number I gave is the people or students who are participating on a daily basis versus sporadically. But the expectation is that they're going to have to complete all their work by the last day of school and in order to obtain full credit. So we're certainly working with them to make sure that that happens, because it will be fall before we know it, and students are going to move from one grade level to another, a course level to another, or in the case of seniors, onto the next phase of their life.
So right now it's just a pass or fail for the fourth marking period?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yep. Pass or fail, but we're still looking to award credit, and that's going to be the important piece. So I think much like in any cyber environment, a lot of kids wait till the last minute to complete the work and turn everything in. So it will remain to be seen.
Kids waiting to the last minute. Who knew? Mr. Rushefski, I know that when we spoke, you had said, you had the one-to-one, so every student already had a computer in your school district, and then it was just making sure they all had them home to get started with this new direction?
That is correct. We have two buildings that are K-8 buildings that are on each side of the district, and then our high school, everyone comes together from 9 through 12. The grade 9 through 12, all of our students would bring their technology to and from school each day. And I believe it was grades 6, 7, and 8 were able to bring their technology to and from school each day. It was that K-5 population that we had to send their technology from school to home. So we had some transition issues, out of the gate. And we used the last 2 weeks and a couple days into April with review and enrichment, as well as closing out the third quarter. And then we've been essentially doing new planned instruction as part of our continuity of education plan going forward. But we had all that ironed out by that first week of April, where everyone had their technology. And like Stroudsburg too, we had Wi-Fi hotspots that we distributed, and then we lined families up with high-speed internet.
So it appears everyone's set up. What about the accountability, the kids being on their own without a teacher over their shoulder, unless their parent is their teacher over the shoulder, making sure, how is that going? Dr. Curry?
That's been probably one of the bigger challenges we've faced. And I think that, based on the input and the feedback that we have received from our teachers, we certainly are working one-on-one with students. We have built in what are called office hours for each teacher on a daily basis, where students can reach out for that extra support and help, that one-to-one communication, much like it would be, whether it was a before study hall or after school type of situation if we were in the bricks and mortar school. When it comes to the accountability piece, what we're requiring is for students to complete the work that's assigned by the teacher. And every Monday, our teachers put the assignments out for the week. They get a C for complete, an NC for not complete, or an EX for excused. In an excusal situation, it could be where you have a family or who are working from home, and it's very difficult for the student to be on during the time that the class is actually taking place. So they need to, it's not like they don't want to, but they just can't, because mom and dad's work takes priority, in that household. And it's a case where the student then will reach out to the teacher and say, look, I can't do it at this time. They'll get an excuse and have an opportunity to make up that work and turn it in at a later date, past the deadline, if you will. But we've been pretty flexible with that from the onset. And we think we found some success with that model. But at the end of the day, we're expecting students to complete the work because they're going to need it as the basis moving on to the next level, whatever that may be.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Curry, where do parents go to find that information? It seems like there's some rules, regarding this online instruction. So where would parents go to find the information of how this is supposed to work if they still don't know?
Our website is the best place. We rolled a new website out in late January. And I think it's well populated with a lot of information. I put at least one video out a week. There's got to be almost 16 to 18 videos explaining everything that we're talking about. It's followed up in writing, and oftentimes there's a phone blast that will go out just telling everybody, go to the website and look. We also utilize our district Facebook page to the best of our ability. I typically run that, but the website has been the primary means to share information.
Mr. Rushefski, is Jim Thorpe handling that pretty much the same way? District website, is the communication working the way you'd like it to at this point?
Yes, the district website is I guess, the launching pad for the continuity of education, but we've established great communication between the teacher and the families. And make no mistake, highly involved parents that are involved with their students and their instruction is a very important component to success. We have, on average, about 90% of our students logging in. We take attendance every day. We also check on the students' mental well-being. We do ask them to answer a question of how they're feeling, and each color represents a certain feeling. And if we have a student who's really in a bad place, 3 days in a row, we have people reaching out to them. So we're looking at their mental well-being as well as their academic well-being during this process.
Mr. Rushefski, let's talk about some of the different students that you have. You have, of course, the younger students, the early grades, and you have the later students. I would imagine there's a difference between what they know about utilizing computers for online learning. So I'm thinking that the younger students may, grades 1, 2, 3, 4, may be having it a little more tougher, a little bit more rougher than the students in high school.
I would agree that there's a level of more independence with the older students versus in a continuum going down to the primary grades where you would need more parental support. So I would agree with that statement. But I could tell you that the students that are in K1 and 2, you don't count them out. They're when it comes to technology, they're doing things that we've never done before, and they're growing up in a technological age. But you are right. The continuum, as they get older, there's more independence.
Dr. Curry, what about the younger students in your district? How are they handling things?
Very similar to what John just described. I'm really proud of our families because I think they have made it a priority in their homes, even amidst very challenging circumstances, whether they work from home. In some cases, they may have lost a job or lost hours at their career, and it becomes a challenge just to make ends meet. But they have really worked hard with their children, and children are working hard to do what they need to do to be successful. And I mean, generally, students want to please their teacher. They want to do what's right, and they want to earn good grades and work hard. And our teachers have done a fantastic job of motivating and reaching out to them personally. And, at the beginning of this, it was similar to what John said. We have, there it was more of a personal connection about the mental health and well-being of students and families than even the educational process. And as time has, marched on, we have seen, a better model and delivery of the education, the new education, not just review and enrichment, but new learning, and following up with the guidance counselors, administrators, and licensed social workers and teachers themselves in regard to the mental health needs of students during this difficult time. Because if they were having problems prior to the closure, we certainly have made them a priority and continue to work with them even through a remote methodology. But at the end of the day, it's been a real learning experience for teachers, for administrators, for parents, and for students, especially the younger students. And it has forced us in a good way to really close a gap, a technology gap that existed, and make it better for everybody. So it's been, as bad as this virus is for everybody, there are some small victories that we have seen educationally through this online means.
Switching gears a little bit and looking to the oldest students, the ones getting ready to step into the real world, it's got to be tough for them. Seniors, graduation, all of the things that usually go along with senior year. It has to be tough for those kids. And are there any plans in either school district to make something special? Dr. Curry, let's start with you. Stroudsburg, are you doing anything? Obviously, everything's different right now, but what are you planning for graduation in the senior class?
I think there's nothing more humbling and heartbreaking at the same time than seeing, the students lose out on multiple opportunities, regardless of grade level. But our seniors especially, we're doing our best to just be patient. And what we're going to be releasing tomorrow are 3 graduation, in-house, personalized as normal graduation dates, with the understanding that if everything is under green and all of the anything that has been banned is now lifted through the governor's order or otherwise, we would like to be able to have a personalized graduation. But we'll also have a backup plan for an alternate type of graduation that we're working on. And we're working very closely with our high school principal on that process and what that looks like. Certainly our school board is involved. They've been fantastic through this process. And so it's a kind of wait and see situation right now, but we are doing our best to just provide this experience for the students.
Yeah, Mr. Rushefski, how about Jim Thorpe? Anything with graduation? What are you looking ahead to?
We're very close to Pocono Raceway, and there's a chance we're having discussions with Pocono Raceway to potentially have our graduation on the track. And that will allow parents with social distancing to maintain an opportunity to be in their vehicles and see their child graduate. So we're working out some of the logistics for that. If that's not possible, a virtual graduation would be the other alternative. We ruled out, I guess, the traditional graduation that we would have on the football field or in the gymnasium. So it's probably going to either be a virtual or possibly at a site like the Pocono Raceway.
Wow, that all sounds exciting.
Yeah.
I hope that all works out. Let's get back to the teachers for a moment. I would imagine that virtual teaching, instruction online, in a way has got to be tough for teachers because they've been teaching in the classroom really up to this point and had not given a lot of thought about going online with the teaching and instruction. So I imagine that they had a lot of homework to get this up and running. And I also would imagine that they weren't all doing the same type of thing. So a student, using one teacher might be communicating with them through a different means than another teacher would be, maybe utilizing something different. Dr. Curry, can you tell us how that has transpired at your school district?
Sure. I mentioned the phrase, there's been small victories in a previous answer. And I think that's one of them where, we have over 400 teachers here in Stroudsburg. And, frankly, they were all different levels of competence when it comes to utilizing technology in the classroom and their comfort levels. And what this did was allow us to provide them training, ask questions, and it's kind of a baptism by fire per se, but they have all had the opportunity, have risen to the occasion, and have performed extremely well amidst the circumstances because they realize how important this is because they all have a connection with their students. And they want to work very hard to support the students that they have in their classrooms and families, especially during the difficult times. So it's been there's multiple modalities, I guess, in terms of we use Chromebooks. So within that, they can certainly use a Zoom platform. They can use Google Hangout, Google Classroom. They're communicating via telephone, email. So there's multiple ways of communication. They can pre-record a lesson in some cases. That's what they're doing. Not everybody's comfortable using all of those things I just described, but they're using some of those things, and it's working right now. So that's I'm proud of our staff. They've really embraced this and have ran with it, and it's been a good thing.
And Mr. Rushefski, how about your teachers over in the Jim Thorpe School District? How are they handling things?
I think we're working harder in this e-learning than we would in a traditional setting right now. It's unbelievable the amount of work that's going down because of the fact that it has to be virtual and for the most part, our instruction is asynchronous, which means it's not happening live. And that's something that is different than what would happen in a traditional setting where you're standing and delivering a lesson from the front of a classroom and now you're essentially planning something. Students are doing their work and they could be doing their work from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. at night or even later. The important thing is that students are checking in, they're doing their work. And I can tell you teachers are doing a lot of collaboration, using things like Zoom meetings and Google Hangouts. And that's happening in terms of collaboration, in terms of communication with parents, same avenues. It could be a Google Hangout, it could be an email, it could be a phone call. And I would imagine each teacher is using their preferred mode of communication.
So when we look at all this, it happened so fast, and we were on that direction anyway to be moving this direction. But because it happened so quickly, are you afraid at all that this is going to not quite be good enough to get the kids ready to go to the next grade level? Were we able to catch up fast enough to make it work well enough to keep education on track at the level it should be, at the level it would have been had they continued the school year at home? Mr. Rushefski, let's start with you.
That's a great question, because one of the things I put out there was that this plan, this continuity of education plan, was not going to be perfect, but it was going to be our best shot at certainly teaching students during this situation that never happened before, unprecedented time. And we recognize that there are some things that would happen differently because we're in this e-learning situation, but there are things that are emerging because of the e-learning that we're developing skills. I'll give you an example. I really never used Google Hangout or Zoom meetings like I do now. In the last month, I feel like an expert today, but a month ago, I was such a novice. And I think that that's the same situation for our students, the same situation for our educators, that we're growing in directions that we haven't grown before. We did technology to supplement. Now we're using technology to drive learning and instruction. So there have been some things that are different, and we've grown in ways that we never thought we would grow before.
Yeah, for sure. Us too, I think. Dr. Curry, what about you? Do you have any fears of it not being what you would have had if they were really in the classroom?
Sure. We made no bones about it that when this first happened, we were very clear that what we are going to provide will not be the same as if we were in school physically. But we were going to give it our best shot. We have, and I believe that, one of our goals was to look at, in essence, from March 16th till the last day of school would equate to 54 school days. And our goal is to be able to look in the mirror come June 10th and say that we have taken 54 days of lost instruction and mitigated it to 20, 15, 22, whatever that number may be, and it may vary by classroom. That's going to be the tail of the tape. And then it's going to be to put programs in place for the summer. And then also, as we look to next fall, making assumptions that we're all back and everything's normal, to have plans to close the skills gap that may have been lost based on whatever grade or course level that students were participating in. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but I feel very strongly and confident in looking at what we are doing to help reduce the potential for lost instruction. And when you look at these 54 days and consider statewide testing, you consider field days, you consider field trips and other things that are germane to the curriculum and enhance the curriculum, they are days where generally you're not in class. So therefore, you kind of got to look at that in the total equation. So we say there's 22 days of instruction that we didn't cover or assess. There's also all those things I just described that go into those 22 days. So the total loss, I think, is going to be less, but I credit the people who are delivering the education and the commitment of our students and families to see this through. And I think that there's going to be pockets of kids who just, for one reason or another, have not participated, and we just have to, make sure that they don't fall through the cracks come next year. So it's going to be a process, and it's going to be very individualized.
Now, I imagine that you're also thinking about what happens if we don't go back to school in the fall, and what are we going to do this summer to prepare so that it's even better online instruction in the fall, Dr. Curry?
We're working on 3 plans right now for the fall. One will be a return to normal plan, one will be a mitigation plan, and one will be a closure plan. And we will be prepared for all 3. We realize, in looking at what we're doing now, albeit there's a lot of good things in it, we know there's some areas for improvement, and we will be looking to expand on the planned instructional activities, the way we grade and the way we take attendance, and making the requirement probably significantly different than the whole pass-fail concept that we're utilizing right now.
And Mr. Rushefski, when with all this that's happened, I'm sure you've learned some new things. And do you think that school will be different, moving forward in the fall, whether you go back or you're still online? But the things that you've learned over these past 50 or so days, is it changing the way things may be?
The thing that I'm looking at in terms of going back to, if we went with a traditional setting, it's going to be different than it ever was before. And what I mean by that is, you take a 72 passenger school bus, how am I going to transfer a student? We're 133 square miles of district, so we have to transport students quite a ways. How are we going to put students on the bus and make sure that they're 6 feet apart? And I'm even looking at like Mart's restarting their runs to New York City, and they're only putting 15, passengers on their buses to go from, say, the Poconos to New York City. Well, how am I going to get students from their bus stop to the school in social distance? How am I going to run a parent pickup and parent drop-off line, that's maybe 10 times longer than it's ever been? How about cafeteria and social distancing there? Actually, the easier plan to implement is going to be e-learning for 2021, or a hybrid of maybe having half the school in the brick and mortar and the other half on e-learning, and then maybe just rotate day by day. The hardest option, I think, may very well be going back to that traditional setting, because it's going to be very difficult in the midst of still having COVID-19 being an issue.
Yeah.
Wow.
Dr. Curry, on the same line of all the things, it just seems kind of impossible that we would ever open our school buildings with physical distancing working properly. And like right now, everybody's wearing masks. Do you see that happening in a school setting?
Reopening?
With masks and physical distancing actually working?
I don't see it actually working. My biggest struggle, and I'm just being brutally honest, is that as we look at a closure plan versus a traditional opening versus a mitigation, it's either going to be, as John said, we're either open or we're closed. Who's going to trust anything enough to want to send their children if we have to go through all of that? It's just, if it's that bad, then don't have school. And I think that there was a very good article in the New York Times. It was either this morning or yesterday's paper. I don't remember exactly what day it came out, but they were talking about studies that they were doing in Germany, Israel, China, Sweden, Finland, and Germany. And they were studying students who had COVID. And what they found was that students had a high degree of the virus in them, but didn't exhibit any symptoms. Therefore, they are highly contagious and able to pass it along to other family members who are in the group that is the most susceptible to major illness, death even. So I'm just not sure how we safely reopen. And it's just going to be a case where we're going to monitor this very closely, work in collaboration with our governmental entities, follow the rules, and do what's right, relative to the health, safety, and well-being of students, because if the basic needs of that aren't met, no one's going to learn anyway. So we just have to be very deliberate and careful in our planning. We have to communicate it well to our constituency, and that's the plan. So, today, as of today, May 6th, 2020, we're working to open on time and regular, making assumptions. But when you look at assumptions, there's assumptions for opening and there's assumptions for not opening. There's assumptions for mitigation. But, and I don't want to get too wordy, but at the end of the day, too, we have to, get America back to work. There's got to be some plan to do this to re-stimulate the economy. But when schools are closed, that creates a major problem for that to happen. So but again, we got to do it safely. So there's a lot of factors to take into consideration. So that's our plan at this time. That's what we're working on, and more to come.
Mm-hmm. Well, e-learning, definitely the wave of the future, and I know you're getting better at it every day. Thank you to both Mr. Rushefski and Dr. Curry for joining us today, and thanks for rising to the challenge to tackle those tough issues and certainly all this new territory.
And for the latest coronavirus updates, don't forget to watch the Pocono Valley and Night Reports right here on TV 13, only on cable.